Hello, friends. Welcome into another Pack a Day podcast happy hour. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. It is officially preseason, and yes, I think you hit it perfectly. Super excited for preseason. WTF is wrong with me, Ms. Pretty Gal. Yeah, I'm right there with you. There probably is something wrong with all of us that we are this excited for a game that literally doesn't matter. A preseason game, an exhibition, maybe a couple series of Jordan Love. It doesn't matter. We're all freaking excited for it and can't wait. It's not quite the real thing, but it's as close as we get in August 11th. So we will absolutely take every single second of it. Hope you guys are enjoying a beverage, whether it be a soda or a drink, whatever your choice is. I got my Door County Cherry Wheat right here from Hinterland Brewing in Green Bay. For the people who are, I guess not people, the person who was upset with me last week for having alcohol on a happy hour. Sorry, I have it again. Maybe don't attend a show called Happy Hour if you don't want to have a drink. But no, whatever you guys want to have. If you don't want to have anything, that's fine. If you want a soda, that's fine. Whatever you want, that's cool. I actually drink way more soda than I drink beer. But if we're gonna have a happy hour, feel like I have to have a beer with me. All right, what do we got here? Obviously, feel free to start asking questions. Any super chats will go right to the top, and I will 1,000,000% sure make sure that I answer those. But I'll try to get to as many questions as I can, of course. Great choice, Michael Shiner, Oktoberfest. Big fan of just about any Oktoberfest, but Shiner certainly has a good one as well. All right, what do we got here? 60-yarder from Anders. That'd be fun, Doug. I will take any made field goal from Anders at this point. Obviously, just trying to get his confidence up a little bit. But he's been hit and miss literally. But yeah, I think he's going to hopefully bounce back. He's been good under the lights so far, starting with family night where he kicked really well in that game or in that scrimmage, I guess. So yeah, that was we'll see what we get from Anders tonight. Yeah, start hitting me up with questions, guys. I'll be happy to answer everything for you. All right. Can you describe how much defensive scheme we will see tonight or all vanilla? So you never quite know, but I think probably and first of all, thanks for the question, but I think the big thing that you should expect is you're not game planning for Cincinnati, first of all. All right. They're not going out there and being like, all right, what do we need to take away from Cincinnati in order to be like, they're not doing anything like that. Right. So there's not a specific game plan. I'm sure there's certain things in the defense that they want to work on. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's vanilla. I'm sure there's a lot of things from like their cover 3, cover 4, and the communication on the back end that they want to work on from a defensive standpoint, that they want to call some of that stuff that is going to be prevalent that they call in, all throughout the season, right? Not just in week 1. So I think they're going to call the stuff that they need to call. I wouldn't, necessarily put it past them to, blitz here and there, do a couple things, but don't expect anything exotic. Don't expect anything that, they want to surprise people with in a regular season game. But I mean, guys, the playbook for every single team in the NFL is extremely similar, and everyone knows the plays for the most part. So if you've got a couple wrinkles up your sleeve, you're not showing any of that stuff on defense in a preseason game for sure. But you know what? They're still going to, I'm sure, bring 5 or 6 guys on an occasion or two. They're just not going to go out of their way to like disguise it a ton and like game plan for Cincinnati. So a lot of vanilla stuff, a lot of cover 2, 3, and 4. But again, they're going to be communicating on the back end to make sure that they've got their switches and assignments aligned and on the right page and ready to go for the start of the regular season. All right. Let's see. Tundra Talk, thanks for the question. A lot of fun positions to watch, but what position group outside of quarterback and safety are you most interested to watch? I think there's a lot of fun stuff on the offensive line. So, I mean, it may not be the starter stuff, but we'll see how much Zach Tom and Josh Myers play. It wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to, when we say like the starters are going to play a couple series, I think that's kind of like select starters, right? It wouldn't surprise me if they got Josh Myers some extra playing time, just trying to get him back on track a little bit. But then after that, like the tackle positions, whether it's Yosh Nijman and maybe Zach Tom gets a little bit more time too, but the Caleb Jones, the Rasheed Walker, Sean Ryan at guard is another one that I think is going to be really interesting. Luke Tenuta. So I think they're like all throughout this game. I mentioned this on an episode the other day, but when we get into late in the fourth quarter, right? And there's like, you're wondering like, all right, what the heck do I watch? Like, who am I going to watch at this point? There's basically only like 4 like offensive linemen that, are at the bottom of the depth chart, so to speak. You've got Gene DeLance, James Empey, Cole Schneider, and Kadeem Telford, right? So you've got those 4. And then for sure, you're going to have at least one of the other guys. So at minimum, you're going to have somebody to watch late in the fourth quarter, meaning either Luke Tenuta or Caleb Jones or Rasheed Walker, or one of those guys is going to be in there. So I think the offensive line, there's going to be something to watch no matter what. Really excited about the young defensive linemen. So Devontae Wyatt, somebody to keep an eye on early. And then a lot of Colby Wooden, Carl Brooks, and Jonathan Ford, I think will be worth keeping an eye on as well. So it's hard to almost pick a position that's not interesting, because you go tight end, you got Musgrave, and then Kraft, I'm sure, is going to probably play a decent amount. You go wide receiver, and you start getting to see guys like Dontavian Wicks, maybe Grant Dubose, I would expect to play in this game. Malik Heath, I would expect to play a lot in this game. So it's almost difficult to pick a position that I'm not looking forward to. Inside linebacker, I'm really looking forward to seeing how Tariq Carpenter plays and his transition from safety to linebacker. So you pick it. I'm excited about it. The one that might not be super fun would be corner, because you got Carrington Valentine at first, which will be fun to keep an eye on. I don't know that Jair's probably not going to play at all. I don't know how much Rasul is going to play. And then you start after Valentine, you start getting into maybe not as much fun stuff, but we'll see. A lot of really fun stuff to keep an eye on. All right. Max Coverage, thanks for the question. A player that I have my eye on most tonight, of course, the first 14 snaps goes without saying, or first 2 series, whatever it is, for Jordan Love is going to be dissected a billion times over, and that's going to be the biggest part of tonight. A lot of the players I just mentioned, of course, but a player that I most want to keep an eye, I think it might actually be Carrington Valentine, and then Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden along the defensive line. This is a team that, again, you want some of these young players to start really stepping up and showing that they're going to be able to be capable players come the regular season. It's funny how this week 1 of preseason sort of resets everything, because hope springs eternal in training camp and you see these guys making plays. And then all of a sudden you get into week 1 of preseason and like everything can change. If all of a sudden Carrington Valentine goes out and gets schooled all day at corner, like, all right, well, we got to reevaluate that a little bit. Or if Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden can't get off blocks, whatever the case may be, or vice versa, right? You might have a guy that has maybe been struggling a little bit here and there, and they just completely go out and dominate, and that changes the calculus quite a bit as well. So this first preseason game definitely can reset some expectations, and all of a sudden you can go from a guy who maybe wasn't getting much time with the ones in practice, who all of a sudden now is, and maybe a guy who was getting a time with the ones, who now all of a sudden is down with the B team on the other side. So I think it's going to be really interesting for a variety of different reasons. And I'm really excited for practice 2 on Sunday to see if anything changes coming out of this game. All right, Austin, is Sean Ryan a potential starter or potential roster cut if he plays poorly? This is a really interesting one. I don't think he's a potential roster cut at this point, because he's had a really, really good training camp up until this point. There have even been some wondering if he can get his name in the starting conversation. I think he's right in the sweet spot where he belongs to be right now, somewhere around like that 8th, 9th offensive lineman. But this is a 3rd round pick, top 100 pick, who showed like so much upside in college. Last year was a nightmare, right? Came into camp, wasn't in great shape, looked brutal from day one, looked brutal at the end of camp and in preseason. Then he goes into the season, was never in the mix for any sort of playing time whatsoever. You have the suspension at the end of the season, and you literally had to come into this season wondering if all right, if he has a bad camp, he's probably getting cut, right? And you might say he's still a 3rd round pick and it's his 2nd year. Well, Amari Rodgers was a 3rd round pick who got cut in his 2nd year. It took a few weeks into the season, but it eventually happened. Kamal Martin was a 5th round pick who played a ton as a rookie, who got cut in his 2nd year. So, if you look at Brian, he is really, really wanting to keep his rookies, almost no matter what, his draft picks, almost no matter what the first year. Once that page turns and you're into year 2, if you haven't shown progress and you've shown you are who you are, he has not been afraid to move on. So had Sean had a really bad camp, it would not have shocked me if he was in that conversation. Right now, I think he's shown enough in camp that even if he struggles some in preseason, I think there's enough there still that they're going to continue to try to develop. Even if he's basically on another redshirt year, I don't think they'll give up on him quite yet. But if he's awful, and I mean awful, I don't think he has a job completely set in stone yet, but I would definitely more lean towards him being on the roster than not at this point. All right. Well, your expectations of Jordan Love vary based on preseason play. No, I mentioned this on the podcast today too. If he's all of a sudden 0 for 8 with 3 interceptions or something, things might change. But outside of an extreme, and even then, like, again, we're not game planning too much here. And certainly the defense is not game planning for Jordan Love. So even if he looks amazing, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Even if he misses a couple throws, they're still working on the rhythm and timing together with the wide receiver core. And I certainly don't expect him to just go out and completely crap the bed either. So I think he's going to be totally fine. It's probably a nondescript performance overall, one way or the other, where it doesn't move the needle. And I think we're going to continue on in the right direction. I just want to see positive incremental steps from Jordan. I mentioned, I think he had a little bit of jitters on the first day of training camp being the guy, missed a couple throws in that practice. I think he had a couple jitters at the very opening of training camp where he missed 3-ish throws right at the start and then settled down as the rest of practice went on, ending his day 5 of 5 with a beautiful 2-minute drill. I want to see him, not have those jitters at the beginning of this game. And he's, of course, played and started preseason games in the past. So it's not like it's anything like monumental or anything, but I do think, I want to see him just settle down, get in a rhythm, get the offense in a rhythm. And the other thing I mentioned too is it's so difficult because if you're Jordan Love and all eyes are on you and the microscope is on you and everything else, like, you want to go out and make plays, right? And you want to get this offense some really explosive plays and those sort of things. And I think the really difficult thing is this is a defense that's probably going to play mostly vanilla, and they're probably going to play, too high or cover 4, whatever they end up playing. And it's going to be tough to force some of the, you're going to want to force maybe a ball or two downfield just to try to make some plays. I think he's going to have to really take what's given to him. And then I really just want to see him hit those layups as well, but unlikely to probably move the needle in 2 series one way or the other, almost no matter what he does. All right. How much would I expect Romeo and Christian to play tonight? Thanks for the question, J. Rome. I would expect whatever Jordan plays, maybe a series more for Romeo, but I would expect Romeo and Christian to be out there for the first 2 series with Jordan, and that's it. And then you're going to see maybe a little bit more of Jaden Reed. Certainly, I think some Samori Toure, and I think you're going to see a lot of Dontavian Wicks, a ton of Malik Heath tonight, and certainly some Grant Dubose as well. Will tonight show anything about the wide receiver 3? I think this is a constant development and process for both Jaden Reed and Samori Toure right now. And I think those two are neck and neck and battling for that number 3 wide receiver role. Prior to camp, I would have said, and really even the first day or two of camp, I would have said it's going to be in fact, I did say it's going to be Samori Toure. And then Jaden Reed's really stepped up in a massive way since then. Now he has had some drops that he needs to clean up a little bit, but he is so fast. He is so dynamic. He knows how to get open. The crossing routes that he runs are fantastic, both short, intermediate, and deep. Like, I think he's probably, if I had to guess right now, on week 1, who plays more snaps, Jaden Reed or Samori Toure, I would lean towards Jaden Reed right now. But I think both are still very much in the conversation. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I expect 4 wide receivers to play quite a bit on game days, meaning Watson, Dobbs, Toure, and Reed. And I just think they're going to rotate through those guys and make sure that none of them are getting overworked. And I don't know that I expect Dontavian Wicks, or maybe Malik Heath gets a little time, but I think you're going to see a lot of those 4 wide receivers more than anything else. Andy, thanks for the question. Does LVN have a chance to be the greatest Packer who went to Iowa, and who is the current greatest Iowa Packer player? Man, I'll be totally honest with you, Andy. Iowa players, well, I know obviously Micah Hyde, Brian Bulaga, Tyler Goodson. We got Lucas Van Ness. Who else? Who am I missing? That was Daniels an Iowa guy? I think Daniels was an Iowa guy, right? Mike Daniels. You'll have to help me out, Andy, and anyone else on who I'm missing for Iowa players here. But I think Brian Bulaga, just based on the iconicness of Brian Bulaga, Iowa, too, how do you not give that credit? So I would say right now, off the top of my head, it's Brian Bulaga. Assuming it is Brian Bulaga and I'm not missing anyone, then I think, Lucas Van Ness has every right to be in the conversation when his career is done, but he's got a long way to go to beat out Brian, who is so consistent for so freaking long and just one of the really, really good offensive tackles in the league through his tenure. But I think LVN has a chance to be a really, really good football player. I'm really excited to see what he can do against Cincinnati tonight. I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the chat here and see if anyone else blog over Micah. Oh, Josh Jackson. How could I possibly forget Josh Jackson? Oh yeah. Aaron Campman. Good call. Yeah, that's it. Campman versus Bulaga is a really interesting question. That I don't know off the top of my head. I might go Campman on that. I don't know. That's a really interesting one. I want to see in the chat, who would you guys have? Who had a better Packers career? Mike had a great NFL career, but who had a better Packers career? Campman or Bulaga? Bulaga might have had the longevity. That's a really interesting question. I have to think on that, Andy. That's a good overall conversation topic. All right, you just wait. Thank you so much. Detroit favored Sam Laporta over Luke Musgrave, not long ahead of Green Bay. Is Laporta as a prospect clearly ahead of Luke, or is it pick your flavor? Personally, I liked Luke ahead of Laporta. Even if like they were both picking, at what is it? Detroit was at like 33 or 34, one of those two, wherever they picked them. I would have taken Musgrave there personally. I liked both of these guys. The interesting thing is that they had Hawkinson from Iowa, and then they trade him away to Minnesota for like third and other picks, and then take another Iowa tight end, Laporta, in the top of the second round. And interestingly enough, like Hawkinson was a far better prospect coming out than Laporta was. But by all accounts, Laporta's had a very nice camp in Detroit so far. And I tell you by my account and for pretty much everyone else's, Luke Musgrave's had a very nice camp so far as well. So I think it's going to be a really fun one to keep an eye on. Dalton Kincaid picked at the end of round 1 for Buffalo is having a phenomenal camp. And I think that was a really cool thing about this specific tight end class, right? And I agree. And I said this multiple times. You guys can go back and listen to the episodes. I thought Green Bay was so smart to double up on the second and third round. And because Matt Miller, NFL Draft Scout, I think is his handle. Like he mentioned this week that in a lot of tight end classes, Luke Musgrave would have been an easy first round pick. And I've said that all along because I thought that the depth of this tight end class, the Michael Mayers, the Laportas, the Kincaids, the Musgraves, the Tucker Crafts, all of these guys like almost made it so that it kind of bumped everyone down. And I liked Musgrave as much as pretty much any tight end in this class. I really like Laporta too. I really like Kincaid too. It was just a really good tight end class. And I think they got a first round caliber tight end in the second round. I think they got a second round caliber tight end in Tucker Kraft in the third round. I thought they were so smart to double up on a position that was super deep, and given different draft classes, these two would have been drafted much earlier. In my opinion, it was just a really deep tight end class. So I thought they were really smart to do so. But though all of those from Mayer to Laporta to Kincaid to Musgrave, all of those like 5 or 6 tight ends that were taken in that realm, I think are going to be really fun to kind of keep an eye on and see who ends up really having the best career and who got the most value in the draft. Tyler, really appreciate you, man. I see you every week in here and obviously doing the super chats and stuff, and I really appreciate that. What can you take away from special teams tonight besides Carlson's performance? Is that the phase that will look the most like the regular season in terms of who's getting reps? No, I think it's not the sexiest, most fun thing to watch, right, Tyler? I think usually when we get to a punt or a kickoff or whatever, it's, whatever, let's just get back to the, 1st and 10. But there's going to be a ton to learn from special teams tonight. I think, first of all, as you mentioned, Anders Carlson, and then how the long snap or the long snapping looks, how the holding looks, I think is going to be important. The punting battle, I think we are legitimately in a punting battle between Pat O'Donnell and Daniel Whelan. So I think that's going to be worth keeping an eye on. And then I think just who plays a lot on special teams and who plays well. Who are the opening gunners or flyers? We're not calling them flyers. We're not calling it we-fence. That stuff is all so lame. But the gunners on the outside, who's the starters and who performs well? The jammers on the outside, who starts and who plays well? The personal protector, all that stuff. So I think the amount of snaps played on special teams and who performs well at it is going to go a really long way for spots 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, et cetera on this roster. So it's not cliche. I mean, it is cliche where everyone's like, well, it depends on what they do on special teams. And that's what's ultimately going to decide those last spots. We know it. We've heard it a million times, but it's 1,000,000% true. So yeah, that's where I think this is going to be a really fun special teams to watch for a variety of different reasons. Spencer, thanks so much for the chat. Hi, Andy. Do you think Valentine has the talent to pass Stokes as the third outside corner? Wondering if Eric is in jeopardy of losing his job if he doesn't return soon. So I think the first thing to note here is A, Stokes has got to get back first. And then B, I think they're going to be extremely cautious when he does come back. So I think those are going to be the big things to kind of keep an eye on. I don't think that if both of them are healthy, that Valentine is gotten quite to that point yet. But we need to see what post-injury Eric Stokes looked like. And this is a Liz Frank injury plus other injuries with the leg as well. Eric, when he was playing well, a lot of times he was winning because he had 4.3 40 speed. And it's not just that he's a great athlete. He's, he has great size. He's got great, overall athleticism, but it wasn't like he was functionally like the greatest like cover corner in the world, just from like a performance standpoint and a technique standpoint, right? He won a lot of times with skill, and he did that his rookie year. And then last year, that started to catch up with him a little bit, where it's like, hey, I can't just win with 4.3 40 speed. I got to become a little bit better at the point of attack from ball skill standpoint. I got to become better, just making sure that my technique is great at the line of scrimmage. My footwork is better. And that wasn't there in year 2. And he's basically said as much as well. And he took a major step back, and he really struggled last year. But then he has the injury to the leg, has the Liz Frank injury. And the big question is going to be, is this guy still 4.3 40 speed Eric Stokes? Because if he's even like 4.51 40 speed Eric Stokes, that changes his game tremendously. And now the emphasis is even more on making sure that his technique is flawless and amazing, because he doesn't have that 4.3. And I'm not saying he won't. It's possible he's just as fast, and that's great. And he can still make up for some of the mistakes with that 4.3 40 speed, right? But I think we're going to have to see, A, when he comes back, B, just how cautious are they with him, and then C, how does he perform after that? And then, I think they still have very high hopes for Eric. And I think the hope is clearly that he's back sooner rather than later and can get involved in this defense in some capacity. But even then, my guess is you're looking at dime corner, because I don't think Rasul is going, especially the way that he has been playing. I don't think Rasul is going anywhere at that opposite corner position. Clearly, Jair's not going anywhere. And then you could say, well, like, what about Keyshawn? But Eric's not a slot guy. And we know Rasul's not a slot guy. That did not work at all last year. And yes, Jair can easily play in the slot, but on those base nickel downs where he's in the slot, and you've got guys like George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk and guards and centers pulling out on you, you don't want, Jair to have to, like, over and over through the course of a 17-game season, have to take on those blocks and be physical at the point of attack. So you don't want him playing there either. So I think Keyshawn is going to start in that spot. And then, I think in dime, then you're like, if you're in dime and you've got 4 corners on the field, it is clearly an obvious passing situation, right? So then you don't mind putting Jair in the slot because he's phenomenal at it. And then it's going to be a passing down. So then you've got Jair and Keyshawn in the slot with Rasul and probably Eric on the outside. And yes, if Eric's not ready to go, or he struggles, or he's not the same, then maybe Carrington can get his name in the conversation. And until Stokes is back, Carrington very much in that conversation and the guy right now. But it'll be interesting to see what ultimately happens once Eric's back and just how quickly they get him back in the lineup. All right, what else do we got here? All right, Pete, thanks so much for the kind words. I'm interested in your take on Aaron taking a pay cut, I'm assuming, in the first episode of Hard Knocks. I have not watched the first episode of Hard Knocks yet, so I can't speak too much on that. Let me think on the pay cut for a moment. All right. So I totally get if people are a bit miffed by the Aaron Rodgers pay cut, right? Because he took a far greater pay cut in his 1 year with New York than, in my opinion, he ever did in Green Bay. And so if people are upset and frustrated by his newfound love for young players and mentoring them and taking them under his wing in New York and taking a massive pay cut so that they can bring guys in and all those sort of things, I get it. I will say this. I don't think Aaron got enough credit for a couple of the early contracts that he took that were below market value, where he could have received a ton more had he wanted to, and he didn't. Now, he didn't take like the Tom Brady pay cut or now the Aaron Rodgers pay cut that he did this year. He just didn't, but he could have taken a lot more, and he did not. He kept it basically just slightly above market value, and he could have skyrocketed that thing if he wanted to. All right. So early in his career, I don't think he got enough credit for that. And there were times where he was making less than some much worse quarterbacks than he was in the prime of his career. So I think that is the first thing to say there. The second thing, and maybe the more important thing here, is ultimately, I don't care. If that's what he wants to do in New York, if he's happy in New York, awesome. By all means, go have fun in New York. And as Mark Murphy said, 65%. That's all I care about right now with the Jets is 65%. Play those 65% snaps, get that first round pick. And ultimately at the end of the day, like I've said, all offseason long, before the trade, during the trade, after the trade, I think this has the opportunity to work out for everyone. And this is what everyone needed. I think Aaron Rodgers is happier than he's been in a long time. That's great. I think the Jets got a quarterback to compete right now in a very tough AFC. That's good for them. I think the Packers clearly needed to move to Jordan and go in a different direction. That's great for them. I think the Packers are potentially, got some pretty premium stuff from the Jets this past year. And if Aaron plays 65%, they get another first round pick next year. That's great. I think this legitimately has the opportunity to work out for everyone. And I think that's the bigger takeaway here. So if people want to be miffed, I get it. I understand it. And it would have been nice if maybe he had done that in his last couple of years in Green Bay. I think Aaron was frustrated, right, wrong, or indifferent. And I don't think he was as quite happy to do some of that stuff. I think he was basically saying, hey, I'll still be quarterback in Green Bay, but you're going to have to pay a little bit more of a premium in order for that to be the case. And again, right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't really care. We're on to Packers season, right? And now we can just cheer for the Packers in Green Bay and 65% in New York. All right. Eugene, thanks so much for the chat. Really appreciate it. Several national commentators have trashed Jordan Love. What do you say about their comments? I honestly haven't seen those, Eugene. And I know that there's been a couple national commentators who have been very high on Jordan as well. I think Orlovsky has been very high on him as well. Here's everything you need to know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And for a variety of reasons, right? We haven't seen him in a full regular season where we need to see him in a full regular season, like everyone does in order to make a judgment on him. Second of all is like, we haven't seen teams outside of maybe the KC game where they had a game plan, but Green Bay had a really crappy game plan, as Matt LaFleur will tell you as well. Like, we haven't seen teams game plan specifically for Jordan. So even if he enters the regular season on fire and looks like the next great MVP quarterback, you have to make it through a full season of teams throwing everything at you and figuring out what your worst attribute is and just basically spamming that until you fix it and make it that you can beat whatever that thing is. And then, the other thing too is that all of these quarterbacks have different moments where things just click. And sometimes it never comes, right? But other times there's a day where like everything sort of slows down. Like Devontae, and I know that's not a quarterback, obviously, but Devontae, there's a point where like you could tell it was tangible. Everything just slowed down for Devontae. And he was just like, oh, I can just get open literally anytime I want now. And that was coming from a player who in his second year did not do that and dropped everything coming his way. And he went from that to the greatest wide receiver in football. These different players have different breakout ages and different breakout moments and different aha moments that just happen. And that could happen for Jordan at some point this year. So even if the first 5 weeks of the season are looking like, man, this is not going great, by the second half of the year, if things slow down for him and he actually gets those reps every single week, week in and week out, there could legitimately be that moment where things start slowing down and he's like, oh, okay, I get this now. And it just clicks. That could happen too. But I don't think Jordan knows. I don't think his mom knows. I don't think the Packers know. I don't know. Every national pundit doesn't know. Opposing teams don't know. It's just going to be a sort of wait and see for everyone. And that's the real beautiful mystery of this season, is how good or bad is Jordan? And then how good or bad are the Packers based off of how good or bad that Jordan was. And it could go in a million different directions. So that's why this season to me is so fun, is just because I don't think anyone has a real tangible feel. Now, the things I will say about Jordan that you can tell, right? Go back to Utah State. Nobody, and I mean nobody, questioned the raw natural ability. Everyone, even the harshest critics of Jordan and his ability to go through reads and progressions and those sort of things, whatever they wanted to nitpick, nobody questioned the raw natural talent of this player, period, end of story, right? So we know he has that. He has the legs, he's got the arm, he's got the raw talent is there in spades, all right? So that box is checked. Now, the next thing I will tell you is that he has the right demeanor, right? He has the work ethic. He has the demeanor. He knows how to lead a team. This team has already rallied around him. That box is checked. Now, and kind of going back to that work ethic one just a moment, is he works insanely hard. All right. So he cares about this. He wants to be amazing at this. So that box is checked. All right. Now, the next thing is, has he shown some sort of progression? His first year as a rookie was like, it looked like he was not only just a deer in headlights. It didn't look like he knew what he was doing, like, at all. He comes back the next offseason. We finally got like OTAs and mini camps and stuff after the first year was COVID and everything. And he came back and everything, and I mean everything, was like, I don't know what I'm doing, check down. I don't know what I'm doing, check down, check down, check down, check down, check down. It took like 10 practices before he got like a pass, like I think past 10 yards. Like it was a panic check down. And that when Matt LaFleur was saying like he just needs to hit his drop and start, slinging the ball down the field, like it was obvious because he didn't trust anything and he took checkdowns everywhere. And then you get to the third year, which is last year, and all of a sudden the preseason starts looking better, training camp starts looking better, and you've got your moments against, the Eagles last year where like, it's like, oh my goodness, like things started to click a little bit, right? And then you go to this year and it's like, it's a totally different quarterback. He has total command of the offense. He knows every check. He knows every read. He knows every progression. He knows where his escape routes are. He knows where his check downs are. He has everything down. So when you put all of that together, right? All of the talent in the world, the right demeanor to play the position, the work ethic is there, and then the consistent improvement and like the complete understanding of the offense, the faith of the team. I have no idea, and I'll say it again, I have no idea what that's going to amount to. All right. But that's a lot of boxes to check for any quarterback in the NFL. I would be shocked if he just flat out failed based on all of that. But then the question becomes, all right, like listen, the 32nd best quarterback in the league is still a starting caliber quarterback. And so are you, somewhere in that range, or can you get up to the 16th best quarterback, the 10th best quarterback? Like where does that range exist? So yeah, listen, some people are going to want to get on TV and say this, like, what's his face? Adam Shine, whatever his name is, and say he can't play. The guy's an idiot. Like, there's two ways that you can do this. You can be smart and analytical, or you can be loud. Some people like being loud because it's a lot easier. I'll leave it at that. So, there's going to be a lot of people who like to be loud and say what they want to say. And you know what? Adam Shine might end up being right. Maybe Jordan doesn't work out, and I'm sure he's going to scream it from the rooftops that he said it beforehand. And yes, he said it beforehand. He flipped a coin and chose one way and yelled that way, and that was the issue. Or like, he had no idea. He didn't go to camp. He didn't go to anything. But I think that's going to be what makes this so incredibly fun from a season standpoint, is just where does Jordan end up and how good can he be? But everything is there for him. And I am confident and hopeful that he can take a very significant step into becoming a long-term franchise quarterback for this team this year. We're just going to have to wait and see. All right, enough about that. What else do we got here? Did I miss any? Yeti, thank you for the question. It's interesting. And so I actually, it's hit and miss. Some people want to see me upgrade stuff and change things. Other people have been super complimentary and thankful of just like a nice, simple, nice and easy black and white background. I do have some ideas. So a couple things, I have a lot of upgrades planned. So I just got new Mac that is going to be incredible, a Mac Studio that's going to make everything a lot better and I think more efficient for me. I got a new HD camera that I haven't had an opportunity to set up for, a 4K camera. I've got a brand new state-of-the-art microphone with, with the stand and everything that I haven't had the chance to set up yet. So that is coming. I've got a mixer, like state-of-the-art mixer that I have not had a chance to set up with. That is coming. So there are a ton of upgrades that are coming that will make the sound better, that will make the video better, that will make the entire experience better. So I'm working on all of that. I am not an interior decorator, as you can tell behind me. So I've bought a bunch of different stuff. There's other things that I've thought about doing as well in the background. Right now, that is probably the last on my list. But at some point, there probably will be a change, and we'll probably change it up a little bit. But until then, a lot of upgrades that I have to make that don't involve whatever picture is behind me. And I really like Bart Starr behind me. So, but I appreciate the chat, Ryan. All right. Ryan, are you thinking of making a Patreon or YouTube membership? Yes. One of them, probably YouTube membership, but I don't know yet. I have some ideas for what I want to do with that. I want to do probably some member only chats like this, although I'm going to continue to try to do at least one happy hour a week where we continue to do this for everyone as well, but probably some member only chats, probably a discount to the team store. By the way, to the Pack-A-Day store. Pack-A-Day store launched today, packadaypodcast.com. Go out and get your Pack-A-Day podcast merchandise right now. It's up there. It's live, just created today. You can be one of the very first people to have Pack-A-Day podcast merchandise. So packadaypodcast.com, go check that out. But probably a discount to that by signing up. I'm toying with potentially creating another like Twitter handle that would be available for members only, so that you could DM me questions back and forth if you wanted to do that. So I'm thinking of some different things that I want to do with it. It will come at some point, just not exactly sure. If you are thinking of wanting to support up until that point, obviously you can do the super chats here. There are the links to my Venmo and everything are in every YouTube video. If you expand the details, you can check that out. I think there's a way to send a super right on the YouTube video as well. On Twitter, tips are enabled. So there's a variety of different ways to support in that regards if you want to. But yeah, obviously get merch from the Pack-A-Day store, which is awesome. But eventually there will be a Patreon or YouTube member option as well. All right. Sorry for everyone if I'm missing questions. I know a lot of them are coming in. Could you see Brooks playing 30% a game all season? I'm assuming we're talking about Carl Brooks and 30% a game all season. Yeah. So here's the first thing, right? They're going to play a ton of 2 defensive linemen. So you're going to see a lot of Kenny Clark, and then TJ Slayton and Devontae Wyatt are going to take the huge next bulk of snaps. If you go back to last year and think of Slayton and Wyatt, right? They both played about 300 snaps each as the number 4 and 5 defensive linemen, because it was Kenny, and then you had Jerron and Dean, and then you had Wyatt and Slayton as your 4 and 5, right? So think of now you're going to have Slayton and Wyatt taking the starting snaps from Jerron and Dean, and then those 300-ish snaps per player, I think, will be left up to Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden. So is it possible that maybe Slayton and Wyatt and Wooden eat more of those, and maybe Brooks is left with like 100 snaps? Maybe. But I think you're probably going to see somewhere in that 200 to 300 range. I would say maybe 100 to 300 snaps this year for Carl Brooks. But same token, if you have an injury, and heaven forbid, we're not even going to speak that into existence, but if there's an injury to one of the top 4, then you could see Carl Brooks playing a lot more than that right now. All right, what else we got here? John, another great question. So a couple things. I want to make sure, like, my biggest thing is that I don't get, and sorry, the question here is, have I thought about adding any video content? I've added, like, there's been a couple episodes here and there where I've done some additional like visual stuff. My biggest thing is I don't want copyright hits. And I do know with some of the highlights and like all 22 and things like that, that other channels have gotten copyright hits, and it's ended up being a huge issue. So the last thing I want is this brand that I've built on YouTube to all of a sudden go away because I've put highlights or something that I shouldn't have on there, and so on and so forth. So I do want to make it so that it's more interactive and dynamic, whether that's like, I kind of think of, last week tonight style, where maybe I'm off to the side and there's like an image up here that we're talking about or something like that. I do want to add more to that. It is on my to-do list as well. I will say this: when I ended my job, my full-time job, and I'm like, I'm going to do this full-time now, I thought like all of this stuff would be done already. I'd have a better background. I have all my upgrades done already, and like everything. I've been busier than I've ever been before with a billion different things, and just trying to come up with new, creative content and all that sort of stuff, and watching tape so I can be as educated as possible for you guys on the topic. So if I'm being totally transparent, my biggest thing that I care about is the quality of the stuff that I'm talking to you guys about. I want to have the best, most analytical approach to everything. And ultimately that's my brand. It's not going to be the sexiest background. It's not going to be the sexiest face. I can promise you that. It's not going to be the sexiest, most dynamic video in the world. What I want to try to win with is the content that I'm giving you guys. Is it unique? Is it engaging? And is it important? And is it relevant? And is it, going to get you the stuff that you guys need to be smarter Packer fans? And that is my goal. Do I always achieve it? Nope. But that's my goal every single day when I'm putting together video, is like, can I make something smart that is educated and people are going to want to listen to? So that's mostly my goal, but I do want to continue to get better. Go back and listen to my very first episode on YouTube, which I think, people forget is like just under, or right around maybe 3 years ago-ish. It's brutal. It's like this little corner of my room. The audio is brutal. The video is brutal. And it's just kind of trying to constantly make little upgrades here and there so that 2-3 years from now, hopefully I've got the most amazing dynamic YouTube channel that you could possibly freaking have. And it's got all the bells and whistles and everything. And I'm still within like a little over a month or maybe somewhere around there of leaving my job. Right. So I'm still trying to put all that stuff together, but I promise it is something that I'm constantly working on to bring you guys the best brand of stuff possible. And we'll continue to do that for you guys. All right. Dan, thanks so much. All in on your channel. Anyone you suggest to do this for the Badgers? I know Evan Flood does a great job covering the Badgers, but I'll be honest, because I'm so all in on the Packers, I don't get to watch all the Badger stuff. So I'm sure there's some amazing Badger content out there. If anyone else has any suggestions in the chat for people they love covering from a Badger standpoint, feel free to put that in the chat. But Evan Flood's the first one that comes to my mind for Badger coverage. All right. Jen Mark Brown, super, super kind of you. Hey, next time ask a question so I can answer it for you, but that's really, really nice. And I really, really appreciate that. Colin, appreciate your work and insights. And as always, go Pack, go. Go Pack, go, friend. Cheers to both of you. That was super, super kind of you. And I will drink to both of those. All right. You guys are the best. Thank you, Yeti Spaghetti. I see your chat and I appreciate you. Let's not do that, Ryan, but thank you for putting that idea into the ether and everyone getting bad juju and thoughts before the game tonight. But no, you guys are incredible. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. What else we got? All right, Derek, thanks for the question. Will Green Bay be using on defense, both tonight and preseason, as well as regular season, to communicate calls from the sideline? Green sticker. This is a great question. I wish I knew the answer, and I need to dig a little bit more into this. My assumption is it's going to be Devondre in season, but I have seen, and actually credit to Paul Brettel here, Paul noticed that in some practices, at least, it was Quay that was making some of the calls. So I think Devondre, but that's going to be something to keep an eye on once the regular season starts, of who gets that green dot as to whether or not it's Devondre or Quay. If I were betting today, I would guess Devondre. And my guess is that in practice, they're just trying to get Quay a little bit more acclimated to it, should it ever need to come to fruition like it did last year, where he needed to call the plays, and just kind of keeping both of those guys on top of it. As far as like tonight goes, I'm sure Quay's going to play some, and he'll probably, one of those guys will start. We'll see. And then I would assume probably Isaiah McDuffie plays a lot after that, and he would get the green dot when he's in the game. I don't think Carpenter would, and maybe it's possible Eric Wilson could a little bit as well. He's a veteran, one of the oldest players on this team, surprisingly. But I think they could go in a variety of different ways. But wouldn't shock me if Quay started off and then Isaiah McDuffie kind of took over after that tonight, with maybe Quay or Campbell getting time in the regular season with the sticker. Josh Jacobs, a great running back question from another great running back. Does Tyler Goodson make the roster? I hope so. I think he's earned it, and I think he deserves it, and I think he's too dynamic to keep off. But I literally said verbatim over a month ago, or like a couple months ago, what this number 3 running back job is going to come down to is pass protection, special teams, and pass catching, because you have your 2 running backs already, right? Jones and Dillon are going to get all the carries. So in a way, the last thing that matters for the 3rd running back is actually carrying the ball, right? And the best thing that Tyler Goodson has going for him is carrying the ball. Like, he's better than any of the other guys. Like, if Green Bay needed a starter tomorrow, right, and both of Jones and Dillon were not capable of playing, to me, it is an easy give Tyler Goodson the ball 20 times and let him make magic happen. That's the easy answer. But when you have Jones and Dillon, you don't need another runner. You need to have them do all the extracurricular stuff. And then literally when when Matt was asked about it, he said the exact same thing, that what they need at the number 3 running back is special teams, pass catching, and pass protection. And then when Goot was asked about it, he literally said the exact same thing verbatim. What we need at number 3 running back is special teams, pass protecting, and catching the ball in the backfield. And that's, he's a great receiver out of the backfield, so that part's not an issue. But pass protection and special teams, not Tyler Goodson's forte, like at least up until this point, right? He could be a kick returner a little bit, but he's not getting that spot over Keyshawn or even Jaden Reed. He's like number 3 at kick returner at best right now. So, man, it is so hard to predict. If it's me, and again, you can be very thankful that it's not me, I'm keeping Tyler as the number 3 running back, just because I think he's good enough and he's a playmaker, and I think you want playmakers on your team. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect at that spot, and it wouldn't shock me at all if, again, they went with 2 running backs and released everyone else, thinking like, we're at minimum going to be able to get 3 of these guys back in the practice squad if we want. Even if somebody claims Tyler, or somebody claims Lou Nichols, or somebody claims Patrick Taylor, we're going to get the other 3 guys back easily. Like 2 of those guys aren't going to get claimed probably. So, and we might even just get any of the ones we want back. So they could go in a variety of different directions, but if it were me, I would keep them. And I just don't know that that's what they're ultimately going to do, because of literally the job description that they laid out for it. Hey, Packers HQ, thanks so much for that. Really appreciate it. All right, Dan, can you compare this rookie class to any other team from top to bottom? Seems next level. That's a lot of other drafts and teams. I'm assuming you're meaning maybe just the Packers or other teams this year. I'm not exactly sure, Dan. I don't know that there's anything either Packers or other team related that I could necessarily compare them to. I will say this, and maybe this is hopefully the answer that you're maybe more important or looking for. This is by far and away, as we sit here on any August date of any August draft class, the most excited I've ever been about a draft class, period, bar none. It was the most excited I was post-draft for any draft class, and it is the most excited that I was after a rookie minicamp and OTA of any Packers draft class, and it's the most excited that I am going into preseason game one of any draft class. What that amounts to, we will certainly will remain to be seen, and we will certainly wait and see. But I think Lucas Van Ness has the real legitimate ability to be a number one starting edge, or like a legitimate, really good starting edge in this league. I think, Luke Musgrave is going to be a playmaker as like right now. And I'm not expecting him to have like 60 catches for 800 yards and 10 touchdowns or anything, but I think he's going to have a major role in this offense. Already tight end one. I think he's going to have a really nice year. I think Jaden Reed's going to be wide receiver 3 for the vast majority of the year, probably the punt returner. And I think he's going to be a playmaker long-term. I think Tucker Kraft has the ability to be a really good number 2 tight end and really complement Luke Musgrave very, very well. And then we are not even Colby Woodens looked really good at worst. I think he's going to be a really solid rotational defensive lineman, if not a starter long-term. And then I'm trying to think through my head, Dontavian Wicks in very limited time has been impressive at wide receiver. Obviously Carrington Valentine, Carl Brooks has shown up every single day and made plays in some capacity. We'll see what happens with Anders Carlson, but he's clearly going to get the kicking job this year. I'm sure I'm missing a couple. I know we have Lou Nichols, Grant Dubose. We haven't seen much of Dubose. Nichols hasn't done a whole heck of a lot, and he's hurt right now. But overall, this rookie class has been fantastic. Sean Clifford has shown already that he's probably capable of being QB2. That'll be a really interesting thing to watch tonight. Just a really, really fun draft class. And like I said, as I sit here today on August 11th, easily the most excited I've been about any draft class on an August 11th at any point in my life. Eugene, super kind of you. Cheers to you as well. We need to do one of these where just anytime I get a super chat, I have to take a shot or something, and we'll just see how much money I can make. Not before a Packer game, though. That will not go well. Or at least a drink. Maybe a shot's a little aggressive. All right, Luke, thank you so much. Appreciate you, buddy. I think Valentine has the ability to play slot. We need some depth there. I don't think slot is his primary position. I don't think it's ideally where you want him. And I think if in a perfect world, you would keep him on the outside. That said, I wouldn't say no entirely. He's got good footwork. He's got some good size. I mean, right now, I think the biggest issue is that you have Keyshawn in the slot. Again, you don't want to play Jair there. You don't want to play Rasul there. You don't want to play Eric Stokes there. And then it's Ennis Gaines, Shamar Jean-Charles. If you had to tell me you're going into a game today and you either have to play Carrington Valentine or Ennis Gaines or Shamar Jean-Charles or Corey Ballantyne or any of those players at slot to start, give me Carrington. So I'm not going to say no, but I definitely think in an ideal world, he's playing on the outside. All right, Vince, thanks so much for the chat. Who do you see as being the most impactful rookie this year? And which one do you believe will be the most productive as a Packer in their career? Most impactful this year. I have a hard time believing, and I know I'm I want to temper my own expectations and temper everyone else's expectations too. I don't know how Luke Musgrave isn't an impactful rookie. He's been tight end 1 since OTA's day 1. And in mini camps and in training camps, he has been tight end 1. He is such a mismatch problem for teams. There was one stretch in family night where they literally went to him 3 plays in a row, tight end screen, crossing route, seam route. He's going to be impactful in the red zone. He's going to be impactful in the short, those. How many times have we seen those little bootlegs where they hit the tight end in the flat and it's Robert Tonyan or Mercedes Lewis and they are running a 4.9 40 or worse and they can't do anything with it? Now you've got a legitimate fast dude that is getting those and just taking them upfield. That's going to be different. Those crossing routes where the tight ends couldn't gain separation against fast linebackers, Musgrave's going to be a problem there. You get him matched up against a smaller corner or a slower safety or a slower linebacker. He's going to be a matchup problem there. Like red zone, you can play him in that Jermichael Finley role and they use him out at wide receiver, basically. And then who do you want matched up with him? If it's a safety or linebacker, he's going to fake doing the fade, and then he's going to cut inside in a slant, and they're not going to be able to stay with that. And if it's like a taller or a faster player, it's a corner who might be able to get him on the slant, they're just going to run the fade, and they're just going to have a jump ball winner Luke Musgrave. So I have a hard time believing even from year one. And again, I want to temper expectations because I think blocking is going to be an issue. And I know tight end in rookie years don't always turn out all that great, but I think he's going to have a really big impact. Long term, I'm going Musgrave too. I'm doubling down on Luke Musgrave. He's just so freaking talented. But Lucas Van Ness could be the answer to any of those questions as well. And you never know if maybe one of the other guys, the late guys, a Valentine, a Brooks, a Wooden, Jaden Reed certainly could be in that conversation. I don't give up on Tucker Kraft yet either. Like he could be a really good player. There's a lot there. It's going to be a really fun rookie class to keep an eye on over the years. That's for sure. All right, Wyatt, who is your underdog now that we are heading into the preseason? Will Preston lose his job to LVN eventually? Who's my underdog now that we're heading into the preseason? I'm assuming you mean like end of the roster type player, like a player who could maybe make a roster like unheralded. I'll go in that direction. I've said this before too, but for those of you who followed me for any period of time, I love my Raven Greens and my Alex Lights and my Tim Boyles and my Lindsey Pipkinses and all of those guys. Like I love finding a undrafted, unheralded player and just like making them my own. And like, this guy has a real chance and so on and so forth. I haven't found that player so far this year. Now, obviously there's the two, like Malik Heath, everyone knows about at this point. I think he does have a legitimate chance to make the roster. Brenton Cox, I know everyone wants to make the team. I think he's had a pretty quiet camp. And I mentioned this to Paul Brettel the other day at practice is their other undrafted edge rusher, Keyshawn Banks, I actually think has made more plays as an undrafted player so far than Brenton Cox has. I think Brenton Cox is by far the more talented player and athlete, but I think Banks has actually made more plays. I'll go this way. If there's like an underrated player that maybe nobody's really talking about that I've kind of become a little bit of a fan of, Jimmy Phillips, the inside linebacker, is one that's been starting to catch my eye as of late. I mentioned him as like a player to watch in the fourth quarter, where if you're like not sure who to watch in the game and you want somebody to keep an eye on, Jimmy Phillips, inside linebacker, he made 2 straight plays in practice the other day, both run stops, but he flies around a little bit, not afraid, not timid, will take you on right at the point of attack. He's a fun player. I'm not ready to be like, yeah, this guy's going to compete for a 53 spot, but I think he's definitely in the conversation for one of those 16 practice squad spots, to say the least. And he's just a really fun player to kind of watch and keep an eye on. All right. You guys are super awesome with the chats. Todd, thank you so much for that as well. Make sure you guys, if you are putting the chats in, that you guys ask questions too, because I want to answer all of you guys. Making sure I didn't miss any of the supers here. All right. I think I got everyone's. All right. What else we got? Quick drink break. We have a hater in the chat, guys. Oh, maybe he's talking to somebody else. All right. I can't keep track. That's all right. What else? All right, here we go. All right, so I'd assume we'll see a lot of Brenton Cox chances of making the 53 as of now. So yeah, we obviously just talked about Brenton Cox just a little bit, but I do expect to see a ton of him tonight. I think once that probably third quarter, maybe even earlier, comes along, I think we'll see a decent amount of Van Ness. I think we'll see some in Igbare, and then I think we're going to see a ton of both Brenton Cox, and I would expect to see a decent amount of Keyshawn Banks as well. As far as odds to make the team, I mean, certainly first and foremost, his odds have gone up quite a bit since the start of training camp, right? Because both Ladarius Hamilton and Jonathan Garvin are both gone. So that certainly helps his cause quite a bit. At the beginning of camp, it's like he was probably entering as like number 8 guy, and now he's probably number 6. And then now it just comes down to, now on the flip side, there was also the possibility that Rashawn may have been, still on the PUP list to start the season, which maybe could have opened up another spot as well. That no longer is probably in play. At least, they could put him on IR, but he's probably just going to be active. So I think it's going to be Gary, Van Ness, Preston, and then of course Enagbare. And then the question becomes how important, or like how do they keep Justin Hollins? He had a really nice rush in practice the other day against the Bengals that somebody caught on Twitter. Just gorgeous bull rush. And then it's Brenton Cox after that, right? So how many do they keep? Probably 5. And if it's 5, it's probably Justin Hollins as of right now, with Brenton Cox probably making the practice squad. But I don't think he's out of it yet, but he needs to have a really good preseason to really get in that conversation for a potential 53-man spot. But definitely high-end practice squad possibility. All right. Chances are we get a first-round pick from the Jets next year. What do you think our most likely first-round picks would be? Jean-Marc, I have not looked at the draft all that much as of yet for next year. I know the top guys, obviously your Caleb Williams, your Marvin Harrison Jr.'s and so on, but I haven't looked at it all that much, focusing certainly more on training camp and stuff right now. I do think they'll get the first. I do think Aaron will play 65% of the snaps, and certainly hope he does for the NFL's sake, for the Jets' sake, and obviously for the Packers' sake. And then it comes down to what do they want to actually use with their first round picks next year. If we just kind of fast forward a year, right? You're hoping that Jordan's the guy and that you don't have to look at quarterbacks. At running back, it's possible that Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are both gone, but I don't think even if that's the case that you're looking at running back in round 1. Wide receiver, I think your hope is that Watson, Dobbs, Toure, and Reed are like your top 4 guys and that you don't have to spend a premium pick on a wide receiver. I think your hope is that you've got Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft as your long-term tight ends. We'll come back to offensive line. On the defensive line, I think your hope is that you've got Kenny and Slayton and your 2 rookies this year and Brooks and Wooden and Wyatt, and you're good to go on the defensive line. Preston could easily be gone, right? So I think your hope is that you've got Van Ness and Gary leading the way, with Enagbare probably being your number 3 and still feeling pretty good at edge. At corner, Jair, Stokes, Valentine, Razul still, I think, is a really good possibility for next year still, and maybe not needing a corner right away. So to me, if you got 2 first-round picks, there's 2 probably pretty obvious answers. Safety is the first. You're like, even if Savage or Owens or any of those guys play amazing, they're not under contract next year. And you could sign them back, obviously, but you have 4 vet safeties in Owens, Moore, Ford, and Savage, who are all on the last year of the deal, as is Dallin Levitt. Anthony Johnson Jr. is basically the only safety that has any real chance of making the team that's under contract next year. So safety is going to be a major first-round target with one of those first-round picks. And then offensive line, I think, would be the other. There's a real chance that Bakhtiari, based on his contract, is not back with the team next year. Even if he is, you certainly have to start looking at that spot long-term. You've got Jenkins. Josh Myers is a complete unknown at this point as to what he's going to be long-term. Runyon's a free agent. Nyman's a free agent. So the offensive line is probably the other one. And you may have some answers baked in there. Maybe you're confident in Caleb Jones, Sean Ryan, Rasheed Walker, Luke Tenuta. There could be some guys who step up there. But I think offensive line and safety, your hope, if everything else goes according to plan, that those are probably the positions that you need to attack in the draft next year. All right. Max Coverage, thanks so much for the chat. Who do you think plays opposite of Savage, Ford, or Owens? If I were a betting man today, I think Darnell Savage and Jonathan Owens are your starters on day 1. That's my, or excuse me. Owens is your starter on day 1. That would be my guess. So the other thing I'll say is I think all 4 of them are still in the running, and meaning that I don't think any of them have the starting spot locked up. And I don't think any of them have a backup spot, like, for sure. If you told me it was Tavarius Moore and Rudy Ford starting week 1, sure. If you told me it was Ford and Savage, Savage and Owens, Owens and Moore, Owens and Ford, sure. The other thing, I don't think it matters all that much. I think all 4 of them have strengths. I think all 4 of them have weaknesses. I think you're going to see all 4 of them in Green Bay throughout the season try to make tweaks and moves to figure out what is their best pairing. I don't think it's just going to be settled week 1. But if I had to guess week 1 today, I'll say Darnell Savage and Jonathan Ford. sorry, not Jonathan Owens. Sorry. Jonathan Ford is actually Rudy Ford's real name. Jonathan Ford is also the name of the defensive tackle for Green Bay. And then you've got Jonathan Owens. It's all too much. But yes, I'll go Jonathan Owens and Darnell Savage. All right. Andy, are you going to attend any away game this season? Thank you for the great content. Appreciate that, Gil. As of now, I don't believe I'm going to attend any away games this season. So one of the things is I'm in the press box for all the home games. I may attend 2 in the stands this year. I think I'm going to take my oldest son to a game this year. And then I may or may not. I usually go once with a group of my friends too, and we get 4 tickets and go together to the game so I can still go and enjoy, Lambeau Field. Not sure if that one's going to happen yet, but I'm hopeful that it will. So there may be 2 in Lambeau that I go to. All the rest I go obviously in the press box. There's actually quite an advantage for me to not go to road games because I want to be able to put out content obviously right after the game and, put up an episode immediately after. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to want to and be sort of want to go to road games. And then just from a logistics standpoint. So no, I don't think I plan on going into any at this point. We are all preparing for the Alex Magoo show. So Pro HD. Connor, do you think there will be any trick plays tonight? I do not. A, like Matt is sort of allergic to trick plays, and B, never use a trick play in preseason. I've never understood that. Never, ever, ever understood using a trick play in preseason. Never made sense to me. If you have a trick play in the book, why would you ever bring it out in preseason? So Connor, I hope not. I would like to see Matt use a little bit more trickery in regular season games, but no, I don't expect to see any tonight. Yes, Jonathan Ford is Rudy Ford's real name. Somebody can prove me wrong if I'm wrong on that, but I'm like 99.9% sure that is a fact. Matt, how much do we see Jordan Love tonight? I'm going to say 2 series. And let me refresh that. I think 2 series is the goal. If he went out on the first drive and did like 12 plays, 80 yards, touchdown, you're done. He's not going to play anymore. If the first 2 drives are 3 and outs, I think you're going to see him for a 3rd series. I don't think they're just going to be like, well, he went 3 and out, 0 for 3 with, whatever. Like, I think they'll get him out there for a 3rd series. So probably somewhere between 2 to 3 or 1 to 3 series, 15-ish plays, somewhere in that range. But again, it could vary. Like I said, if he just crushes the first drive, you're probably done there. If the first 2 go bad, maybe 1 more, but somewhere in that range. I don't think we're going to see him a ton though. Holy cow, it's 5:01 already. You guys are awesome. That was really, really fast. Let's see. Tommy, Andy, are you surprised at all that Owens has passed forward on the depth chart? Thought he looked solid last year and Packers seem to keeping entrenched guys. No, I'm not surprised at all. So remember last year, Rudy was not the starter. And then they benched Savage and Rudy was the guy. Then remember that Rudy got benched again, or like Rudy got benched at that point, excuse me. And then they brought him and then they made him a starter again at the end of last year. So he was kind of up and down. He had some big plays, but he also had some inconsistencies. Took some poor angles at times, but again, did make some really big plays too. I like Rudy Ford. I think in an ideal world, Rudy Ford is like your number 4 safety and key special teams guy. I think that's where you'd like him. I think Dallin Lovett's like your 5 and a key special teams guy. Both those guys can play in a pinch. But the problem is like you don't have real legitimate true starters, right? So it's going to be up to Savage, Owens, Moore, Ford, whoever to step up and actually take that by the reins and then figure out the rest from there. But like I said, I think this is going to be extremely up for grabs, not only preseason, but as the season goes along. If those safeties start playing bad, if Savage is a bad game, throw somebody else in, try it out. You got 4 guys that are at the same level of talent, which unfortunately isn't that great. And they're just going to probably mix and match until they try to find whatever the best formulation of that safety group is. My oldest is 9 years old. My youngest is 6 years old. So those are my 2 boys. Who is taking care of the punts tonight? I'm assuming, punting, I'm assuming they're going to switch off. Maybe they don't, maybe they won't, they can't. If it was 4 games, I'd say maybe they give 1 to O'Donnell, 1 to Whelan, 1 to O'Donnell, 1 to Whelan or something like that. But my guess is they just probably go like every other and make sure that they're both getting a decent amount of action so they can make the right evaluation. Let's see here. And I'm going to keep going, guys, for maybe about 10-ish more minutes. So if you guys still have questions, I appreciate all the thank yous in there. But we'll go for about 10 more minutes-ish, maybe like 5:15. As long as you guys keep having questions, I'm happy to go a little bit longer with this being kind of like a pregame show. Who do you predict will be the next Packers superstar? We haven't drafted one. I'm going with Christian Watson. He's just too talented. And I think there are going to be some Christian Watson drop ball moments. I just think it is what it is. Man, you put his numbers up last year, and I'm going to go over this one more time because it's always amazing to me. And let me just get it up really quick. So Christian Watson. So last year in the regular season for Christian Watson, played 282 passing snaps. 282 passing snaps last year and put up the numbers that he did, 10 touchdowns or whatever it was. Just for comparison's sake, and I'm not comparing these two as like overall receivers in any way, shape, or form, because the other guy's the best one in all of football. Justin Jefferson had 736 passing snaps that he was on the field for last year. So take Christian Watson's 282 snaps as passing snaps as a rookie in the NFL. Now, ideally, and like the thought is that he's probably better in year two. And now take that 282 and put it into 700 plus passing snaps and think about what he could potentially do from a productivity standpoint. Yes, there's going to be some drops along the way and maybe a couple frustrating moments, but he's a really good blocker on the outside. And the other thing is that you don't have to hit him long in order for him to make big plays. The touchdown from Jordan to Christian last year was a perfect example. You hit him in stride on a crossing route and it might be 80 yards and gone. So he is a phenomenal playmaker. They're going to use him in a variety of different ways. We saw the family night, jump ball touchdown that he went up and got. Like, he can win in so many ways, and I think that's going to continue to happen. So imagine last year, but like over double the amount of snaps that he's going to play. And I think that you're going to see a huge opportunity for Christian Watson. Let's see. Yes, this is the most important one that we've posted. Thank you so much, married guys. Smash that like button, leave your comments, etc. Make sure we're helping out that algorithm as much as possible. Andy, got here late. Question: do you think, or did the Packers give Big B a press pass honorary if they change their policy on filmmaking practices? First of all, it's a great question, and I love the question. Big B deserves some sort of honorary award for everything, but they are the stingiest people in the world with press passes. Good, bad, or ugly. Not making a comment on it, but they are extremely stingy with who can get press passes, and they don't. Basically give credentials or credential individual people. They credential the companies. So I, Andy Herman, while I have a credential, if I were to leave Packer Report tomorrow and say, hey, I left Packer Report, but I would still like a credential, they would say, haha, no, you don't get one. Bob McGinn, who was at JS Online and credentialed for like 30 plus seasons, whatever it was, left the Journal Sentinel to do his own thing and said, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. Can I get a credential? And they're like, haha, no, you cannot. So they don't credential the person. And I know this is obviously not your question, Minnow. I know you're being facetious and joking around, but I'll tell the story anyway. They don't credential the person. When I talked last week about when somebody tried to sneak in and say they were part of Cheesehead TV, the funny thing is, and Aaron was the first one to make this joke as well, Cheesehead TV is not credentialed. So even Aaron is not credentialed through Cheesehead TV. He's credentialed through iHeartRadio, who he does work with as well. So I'm credentialed through Packer Report. Aaron is through iHeartRadio, Cheesehead TV, Pack a Day. None of them are credentialed. So they are very stingy with those, and they don't credential the person. They credential the outlet. So just for whatever that's worth. I don't even know what to do with this, but sure, why not? Sean Ryan can be Royce Newman on steroids. I don't even know what that gets you, but I guess better than Royce Newman. Sean, thanks so much for the question. What kind of production would LVN need versus the Bears to deserve to become a starter? I wouldn't worry so much, honestly, Sean, about who's the starter. I would worry about how many snaps each player gets. So I kind of like the idea. So let's say there's like usually like 65 snaps, right? Let's just say 60 to make this nice and even. 60 snaps in a game on defense. So you've got two edge rushers, 60 snaps apiece. You've got 120 snaps. I kind of like, and again, it's going to be a little bit more than this, but I kind of like your top four on this team playing like 30 to 40 snaps. Like, I kind of like that a little bit more. With Rashawn coming back from the ACL, I don't need him playing 60 snaps for a while at all. Like, let's give him his body a little bit of rest. And it might even be less than that to begin with. Preston, I don't want playing more than 30 to 40 at this point in his career. LVN is probably not quite ready to take on a full 60 snap load through an entirety of a season in his first year. Enigbare is not the physical type that can hold up at the point of attack for 60 snaps in a game. Instead of trying to play any of those guys 60 snaps, give each of them 30 to 40 snaps and rotate those guys through. This is not where you're going from like Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers to like nothing, or like just don't have guys that can back up. Or like even like in the past where it was like, there were times where I think it was like Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary, and then the backups were like Garvin and Hamilton, and they would literally like not stagger them. So you would go from Preston and Rashawn being on the field, and then like for like a drive, it would be Ladarius Hamilton and Jonathan Garvin. And you just went, oh, we're not setting the edge or getting any pressure off the edge on this drive. And this is 4 legitimate edge rushers who yeah, I think are going to get plenty of playing time. And I don't necessarily care who starts. Just keep those guys fresh and keep them coming after the quarterback. Thanks so much for the chat. How do you expect quarterback split tonight? First 2 drives, Jordan Love, 2.5-ish quarters of 2 quarters, probably of Clifford, maybe a little bit more. And then maybe last 12 minutes of the game for Magoo would be my guess. So somewhere in that range, but primary, Sean Clifford, huge chunk of the night, Love a little bit at the start, Magoo a little bit at the end. That would be my guess. All right, couple more here, and then I'm going to get out of here. This is a fun question, Shareable Ninja. Which quarterback in the NFC North do you think will have the best season? This is another one of those. Like, I just think that this is super fun to keep an eye on the NFC North this year. I think Detroit probably ends up being the best team and probably has at least the highest floor. I would be shocked if Detroit finished in last. And I know you asked about the quarterback. I'll get to that in a second. But if you told me any of these 4 teams finished first, second, third, or fourth, outside of maybe Detroit fourth, I'd be pretty shocked if Detroit was fourth. Yeah, I could believe pretty much any of it. And even Detroit, like if a wrong injury here or there, they could end up in fourth. I think this division is totally up for grabs. And then the quarterback one is really interesting, right? Kirk Cousins, maybe the most established, and he had a really, really nice year a season ago, like a really nice year. But you kind of know what Kirk is, and you know what the ceiling is with Kirk. It just is what it is. Jared Goff, arguably the best season of his career. He had a really, really nice year last year. But you look at the rest of Jared Goff's career and you feel a little bit better of like, it's probably a one-off and that's probably not going to keep happening. But if he plays like he did last year, he could be the best quarterback in the division, especially if Kirk falls off a little bit. Justin Fields, I know we all want to make the jokes and say he's just he's a very talented player, and he could easily take a major step and become a better passer. Now, I think he's got some things that he really has to work on, from pocket presence to getting rid of the football to playing within the rhythm of an offense, that I don't think is just going to come overnight. But man, I don't think anyone's excited about playing Justin Fields on Sunday because he can beat you in a variety of different ways. He's got a great deep ball, and he can obviously beat with his legs at any moment. And if some of the other stuff just starts to come, it makes it that much more complicated. He could end up being, if not the best, like right up in the conversation. And then Jordan Love, we don't know what to expect from Jordan. If Jordan goes out and plays what he's capable of, like he could be in that conversation too. So pick your poison. Like all of them could, same thing as the division of like who wins and loses. If you told me any of these quarterbacks ended up being first through fourth, again, maybe Kirk not fourth, because I think there's at least enough of a, like, you know what you're getting there. But and yes, Justin Jefferson, which helps a lot as well. Man, I think it could go in a variety of different directions. And again, just another beautiful mystery that I think makes this season so fun. Bubba, we're not going to talk about Creed Humphrey, but we're just not going to do it. We're not going to bring that down before the start of a game tonight. All right, one more here. Let's see, what do we want to do? And do I think Tim Boyle makes the adjustment? We won't make that the last one, but I think he can. But you know, Wilson's making it, so Boyle's going to have to make it as the 3. I thought he had a pretty nice day on that first preseason, the Hall of Fame game, but he probably more likely practice squad. All right, we'll finish with this one. Thanks for the chat, Richard. Who do you think are the depth players at center behind Josh Myers and or Zach Tom? I don't know that there's going to be any other center that they keep on the roster. I don't think Jake Hansen makes it. I don't think any of the other guys make it. Not MP, not Schneider. I don't think any of those guys make it. But you've got Josh Myers who can play center. You've got Zach Tom who can play center. You've got Elton who can play center. They've actually done a little bit of cross-training of John Runyon Jr. at center. They've done a little bit of cross-training of Sean Ryan at center. So I think they have enough there that they're going to feel like they can move guys around if they really need to, and they don't need like a true necessary center to be that backup. And if Zach Tom wins it, then you've got Josh as the backup, right? So I think it's going to be Josh and Zach as your two primary centers in some capacity. And then they would just move guys around after that if those two were both out for a game in some capacity, which we are not going to speak into existence. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me before I lose my voice here. Thank you so much for joining me. Check out packadaypodcast.com. Get your Packaday merchandise. Thank you for all 18 of you who did the super chats. You guys are beyond amazing, and all of you for showing up and listening. Hope you all enjoy the preseason game a ton. We'll see what Jordan does. I will post an episode after the game tonight. Not sure how quickly I'll get it up, but I'll try to get it up as quick as possible. I'll see you guys tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.